I'd like to call to order the meeting of the December meeting of the Utah Board of Water Resources and welcome everyone here today. We start out with approval of the minutes for October 12th.
Mr. Chairman, I'd move that we approve the minutes as
Have a motion? Do we have a second? We have a second by Mr. Johnson. All in favor?
Aye.
We have some guests we'd like to introduce today with us. We have Sam Sorensen with Weber Basin Engineer. Sam. We have Julie Valdez with the Attorney General's Office. Julie? Oh, you're hiding. And Justin Atkinson with Project Manager for Sunrise Engineering. Thank you. Marty Pushman with the Attorney General's Office. Marty? Thank you. We're going to have the water supply report, and we hope he can do miracles. So with that, you got a hard man to follow with Randy's, but
I'm aware of that.
if you get it to snow tomorrow, we'd be in great shape.
We can't make it snow, but we can talk about what we've got. I'll do my best. Good morning. My name is Jordan Clayton. I'm a hydrologist with the Snow Survey Program here, and I'm giving the talk on behalf of Randy Juhlander, who is out of town at the moment. So I'll do my best to make this entertaining, but we're going to be pretty much fact-based today. I'll talk about the current conditions, what we have on the ground right now, and it's a little bit early, but we'll do our best to provide an outlook for this winter, at least in the near future. Obviously, we had a little bit of snow last weekend, and I've provided here a graph that shows, a map that shows how much snow in terms of inches we got at various SNOTEL sites in the state. And the darker shades of green are places where we received a little bit more snow. As you can see, most of the snow accumulated in that recent storm in the northernmost portions of the state, in the Bear River headwaters, and southern Utah really did not receive any of that precipitation. So did it help? Not enough. What's shown here are the percent normal values for all the SNOTEL sites that are in Utah. And obviously where we have the red triangles, that's where we're in particularly bad shape for this time of year. And where we have kind of warmer colors, the green and the blue colors, I should say, that's where we're doing a little bit better, closer to normal. And really the only places where we have SNOTEL sites that are close to normal for this time of year are close to Bear Lake and in the Bear River headwaters areas. The rest of the state is either at about 60–70% or below. If we look at basin average conditions, this is the snow water equivalent right now. I pulled this graph a couple days ago. This shows, of course, the same thing I just mentioned. In red are all the locations where we have basins that are less than 50%. And the actual percent numbers are provided on there, so most of the ones in southern Utah are well below 50%, some less than 10% of normal. And the brown and green colors are places where we're doing a little bit better. The only place where we're close to normal is, again, the Bear and the northeastern Uintahs areas. This is for the snow water equivalent. Here's the same thing for precipitation. Basically the same graph, but just the numbers are a little bit higher, showing that we have had some rain in southern Utah, but not really enough snow at all. Apologize if this presentation is going to be a little bit sobering, but this is what the numbers are saying right now. I brought with a series of graphs showing where things are at relative to normal, and it also shows for the state where we are in terms of a percentile. So if we look at this graph, we can see we have snow water equivalent on the y-axis, and then obviously our water year is graphed on the x-axis. And our current year is shown in black. And the green line in the middle of this distribution is normal. This is where we want things to be on an average year. And we're below that statewide right now. We're actually in the pink or the red shading, which means we're in the bottom 10%. For the entire state, we're hovering right around that yellow and red line. If we look at how this compares with last year, I also plotted 2017 on the same graph, and you can see last year we were also off to a little bit of a slow start, but then things really picked up right about now, and particularly in January and February. So what we're hoping is that we get that atmospheric river pointed at our state like we got last year, but of course we have no way of knowing that at this point. If we look at projections, what's shown here is sort of the spaghetti of projections. This is all the possible outcomes that we've seen in the past based on 30 years of record. And the top of these lines shows the maximum that we've seen in any given previous water year, and the bottom of these lines shows the worst, and everything in between is showing all the other possible outcomes. So the point of showing this is that if we have an average year from here forward, we're going to still be a little bit below average overall relative to other water years. What we need at this point is a little bit better than average snowpack to fall for the rest of the year in order to catch up with that middle green line. Same thing for precipitation. This is just the precipitation that's accumulated statewide. Black line again is where we're at right now relative to normal. The green line again. And again, if we plot 2017 on that graph, you can see what happened last year, very similar story. And again, if we look at the projections, you can see even with the best possible outcome based on the last 30 years, we'll still hover around the 80–90% range for our overall water year. What we're hoping, of course, is to have a better than average remainder of the water year so that we can at least catch up with average at this point. One of the reasons why we're off to a slow start in terms of the snowpack is the warmth of November, the warmth and the dryness, obviously, but November was particularly warm. What's shown here is the temperatures in black relative to the historical average daily temperature graphs for the entire state of Utah. And you can see where the black exceeds the top of the graph there in kind of middle November. That's for air temperatures at our SNOTEL sites. Those are new high values for statewide averages. And the same thing if we look at the soil temperatures. Obviously the temperatures are going to be a little bit lower, but you see that again we exceeded the top blue line there with our soil temperatures. So November was particularly warm, which didn't help. Soil moisture statewide is actually a little bit above average for this time of year. We're at about, if I remember the number right, about 52–53% of saturation, which is above that green line, which is an average based on about 10 to 15 years of quality control data that we have for soil moisture data. So what does that tell us in terms of the different watersheds in the state? We have, for the Bear River watershed, which we're looking at right here, we have SNOTELs that are doing pretty well. And I've circled the important portion of this chart in red. All of those numbers are hovering between really around 90 and 110%-ish. For the Bear River watershed, that's for Utah and Idaho, which we do not administer those sites. But in any case, this is just, again, reinforcing that the Bear River watershed is doing just fine. When we get into the Weber, we have an average that's not terrible. At the bottom there, you can see that the Weber for snow water equivalent says 66%. That's low, but it's not the worst number that we have for the state. But I should also point out that that number is pushed, it's buoyed a little bit by only 2 SNOTEL sites, Lightning Ridge and Trial Lake. All the other numbers are also are actually fairly low. And so we don't want to distort the image here. We have really around 60–70% of average for most of those, and then we have a couple that are over 100%. Same thing for the Provo watershed, really just one number, Trial Lake again, that's helping that average, even though it's as low as 45% for the whole basin on an average basis. The individual sites are not great, and we actually have a couple that are dry at this time of year. I didn't list all the basins in the state. That would have taken too much time, but I did want to at least mention the severe. So severe is really hurting. We have a basin average of around 12%, and a lot of sites are dry. I quality control those sites myself. That's one of my tasks in the office. And I'm still, even just this morning, was looking at some of those sites waiting for the snow to start accumulating. It just needs to start happening. Reservoirs are doing a little better. The blue lines here are the reservoirs this year, and the green line is the reservoir capacity, the reservoir storage for this time last year. And so we can see that we're doing much better than last year. Obviously, we're still benefiting from the really nice water year that we had last year. So that's some positive news. Which brings us to our water availability index. This is an index that we publish in our monthly climate and water reports. That's a combination of our current stream flow and reservoir conditions. It does not project into the future. That will come in the spring when we publish our water supply outlook reports, but those haven't started yet. It's a little early for those. But based on our current stream flow and reservoir conditions, we're actually doing pretty well because, again, we have a lot of reservoir storage carryover from last year, and our stream flow is around average, which I'll show in just a minute. So those numbers that I've circled are percentiles relative to 100%, and those that are in blue are particularly good for those watersheds. Obviously, we have a couple exceptions. The sand pitch has almost no reservoir storage, and the lower severe is also pretty low. Incidentally, these numbers are included in our monthly climate and water report, which, as I just mentioned, which just came out this morning. I just sort of pushed send on that this morning since Randy's out of town. So that is available to anyone that's interested, and it should be posted to our webpage, I believe, tomorrow. This is an example of why the numbers aren't as bad as we might think for a watershed like the Upper Severe. I just mentioned that there's not very good snowpack or precipitation there, but if you look at 2017, when we combine the blue, which is the reservoir storage, with the green, which is the stream flow, we're actually at about 50% relative to the historical fluctuations there. So again, the take-home from this slide is that the reservoir storage carryover that we had from last year is really helping us out in terms of our water availability indexes. These are from other agencies. This is from the BOR, just showing how the reservoirs are doing statewide. This is data as of a couple days ago, and I think we're all familiar with these diagrams, but just in case we're not, these are teacup diagrams showing how full the reservoirs are relative to capacity, and also how big the reservoirs are in terms of the size of the teacup. And we can see, again, most of the reservoirs are doing reasonably well. Same thing for the Price and San Rafael River Basin and the Upper Green. And for the Bear River watershed reservoirs. Those ones are actually doing quite well. Stream flow conditions, as I mentioned, this is from the U.S. Geological Survey. A lot of green on this map. These are the stream flow monitoring locations. Green is good. If we get into the blue and black colors, that's where we have particularly high stream flow. But we don't see a lot of on this graph are orange and red, which means that our stream flow is close to average statewide. How does Utah compare with other western states? I pulled this from the National Water and Climate Center's webpage. Utah, I circled, there is at about 46% for snow water equivalent, which is a low number. That's not encouraging for this time of year. But other neighboring states aren't doing that great either. The number, for example, in New Mexico is only 59%, and you can see the others on the list. The places that are doing quite well are Wyoming, and Washington is also over 100%. Montana is doing pretty well. This shows the individual snowpack at the SNOTEL sites relative to the rest of the western SNOTEL network. And you can see the red colors for Utah relative to the Wind Rivers, and the Montana sites that are in blue, which are doing much better. So again, what we're hoping for are one of those atmospheric rivers that start pointing that moisture towards us any day now. Outlook. This is from NOAA, looking at the precipitation outlook for the next 3 months. And what they've put together for this outlook is that we have sort of an equal chance for most of the state of having above or below normal precipitation, which Randy has a little bit more of a comical way of putting this, but I'll just say we have equal chance, and I'll leave it at that. Probably going to have above normal temperatures according to this outlook, particularly for southern Utah. And then from the drought monitor, this is the seasonal drought outlook, again showing the state of Utah. The brown there indicates that for those areas of the state, the drought is expected to persist. What we don't see a lot of is the green, drought removal likely. And so we're hoping to see a little bit more of that green for all of Utah, hopefully soon. So here's what I just said in terms of some most important numbers, take-home numbers. The snow water equivalent statewide on average is about 46%, but as we could note from the previous graphs, there is some real regional difference there between extreme northern Utah and the rest of the state. Precipitation is the same, 46%. Soil moisture is about 52% saturated. That's not bad, actually. Reservoir storage, we're doing pretty well, 71% full, and the water availability index, we're in the 65th percentile if we, again, if we combine all the numbers for all the basins in the state. So it's too soon to predict what this water year will be like, but we do have well below average conditions in the mountains right now. As I mentioned, this report just came out. It's dated December 1st because it's based on the previous month's data, but it should be posted to our webpage, I believe, tomorrow morning. And I'm happy to answer any questions.
Question for Jordan. Seeing none, thank you, Jordan. You did make a bleak situation look a little better.
Oh, thank you very much.
I hope we have a better report in February.
I look forward to giving that.
All right, thank you. The Lake Powell Pipeline Project report, Joe?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members of the board. A quick update on a few items with the Lake Powell Pipeline Project. We are anticipating the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission, FERC, to be issuing their ready for environmental analysis, hopefully within the next few weeks. What that does is triggers the official start to the NEPA process, and that they would then prepare to issue the draft EIS, which we would expect to happen sometime late next year. As we gear up for this official kickoff to the NEPA process, we talked a little bit at the last board meeting about the need for additional legal help as we look at our project record and wanting to make sure that we're ready for NEPA. And as part of that, we talked with the board about entering into a common interest agreement with the districts. At this time, from advice of the AG's office, we'd like to recommend that the board authorize the district, the division, and the director to enter into memorandums of understanding with the districts instead of the common interest agreement. And I think that would offer more of what we are looking for in this situation. A couple of other items. The cultural resources report for the project has been reviewed by the State Historic Preservation Offices as well as the tribe, and we are working on addressing the comments that we received back from the State Historic Preservation Offices and the tribe. And that report will be completed and turned into FERC at the first part of next year. Another item would be the BLM has identified the need to modify one of their resource management plans in Arizona, and we are suggesting that the board allow the division and director to enter into an MOU with the BLM for this work, and it would also involve the districts, Washington County Water Conservancy District. So this would be an MOU to handle this resource management plan amendment that needs to take place. And then one other item is in our ongoing project work, we often try to meet with the Kaibab band of the Paiute tribe because one of the potential alignments to the project would cross the reservation, and we've been meeting with them over the years and have another meeting set up with them in December to kind of keep them updated on the project and hear any concerns that they have. And so wanted to let the board know that there's an upcoming meeting with the Kaibab Paiute band. And that's the update I have at this time. Any questions from the board?
A motion on the memorandum of understanding for both the Bureau and the district.
And we want to vote on those separately, don't we? Okay. Well, the board would recommend that the director and recommend to authorize the director and division to enter a memorandum of understanding with Washington County Water Conservancy District and Kane County Water Conservancy District, and I'd make that motion.
Have a motion. Do we have a second to that? We have a second by Randy. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you.
And the second motion that I would make is that we authorize the director and division to enter into a memorandum of understanding with the Bureau of Land Management and the Washington County Water Conservancy District.
I'll second.
We have a motion and a second by Kyle. Any questions on that motion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you.
Thank you.
Joe. We'll now do a feasibility reports, and we'll start out with Gransville City. We'd like to welcome Brent Marshall, Mayor of Gransville, Sherry Broadbent, Financial Director, Alex Barton with Zions Bank,
Alec Buxton.
and Craig
Neely.
Beely with Aqua Engineering, and Cheryl Parker. We bring the whole city.
Brought enough staff to protect.
Welcome. Thank you. Jacqueline?
Good morning, Chairman and members of the board. The proposed project is located in Gransville City in Tooele County. The project is to replace approximately 20,000 feet of mainline pipe with 12-inch PVC pipe to provide efficient water delivery and to meet minimum fire flow standards. Additionally, the north well would be replaced to recover deteriorating yield conditions. The dashed red line on the map represents the main line, and the red circle represents the north well. Gransville City provides culinary water to a population about 10,900 through approximately 2,886 residential connections. Their culinary water system consists of 5 wells, 4 storage tanks, and approximately 50 miles of distribution lines. Their current Main Street water main was installed in the 1950s and does not meet the Utah Division of Drinking Water's rules that require a minimum of an 8-inch diameter water main to provide, for public water systems for fire suppression. Their current line consists of 2, 4, and 6-inch diameter pipes. However, in some areas, they've found 1.5-inch pipes when they've had to do emergency repairs on these areas. This is an image of the inside of the north well. Its original capacity was 700 gallons per minute. However, deteriorated casing and eroded perforations have contributed to a decline in production, and it is currently operating at less than half capacity. Project benefits include compliance with Utah Division of Drinking Water's fire suppression requirements for public water systems and full production capacity of the north well. The cost of this project is estimated to be $5.1 million. Staff recommends the board authorize 70% of the project costs up to $3,570,000. I apologize for the error. And the bonded indebtedness be returned at 3% over 10 years with annual payments of approximately $469,000 and includes reserves. That is staff's report.
Thank you, Jacqueline. Any questions of the staff? Seeing none. Mayor, would you like to add anything?
Yes, I certainly would, Mr. Chair. And board members, we'd like to thank the staff that you have. They've been very informative, but we do have some concerns over the terms of this loan. As we have another loan that is ongoing, our Main Street is going to be replaced in a year. So in conjunction with UDOT replacing Main Street, we're trying to do a sewer project that goes down Main Street as well as this water project. And we feel like the terms that we are being given, that it really puts us kind of in a difficult hardship with the demographics of our community. We are a fast-growing community, or have been a fast-growing community, and so for lack of a better term, we have old money and new money, but the new money is a whole lot more than the old money. And so with this Magi, and I understand you guys have this to do your calculations with, we have people who, my last month's water bill, I had over 90 people who are struggling to pay the water bill that we currently have. And by increasing this and putting as big a interest rate and cost repayment that there is on this, with the terms of this being at a 10-year loan, I'm only going to double that hardship on the old money, if you will, for lack of better terms. I do have residents that their only source of income is the Social Security check that they received from their husband who passed away years ago, because we have a lot of older ladies who, years ago, women didn't work outside of the home. It's a different world today than it was then. So we're going to be putting a tremendous burden on some of them. We are currently looking at our water rates, but this Magi, it works great if you're at the upper end of that Magi scale. If you're at the lower end of that Magi scale, it can be a little more of a burden to you. So we ask that you take that into consideration, and we would ask that maybe that the interest rate could be reduced down to a 2% interest rate, which would be a little more palatable for some of those people that are on these hardships to be able to maintain a quality of life that is at least reasonable.
Thank you. Did you request additional money from the Division of Water Quality for your water project?
We did not request any money for the water. We did get a loan for the sewer through the Water Quality Board.
Why did you not package this as one loan through them?
To be quite honest, we didn't know that we could. We had originally looked at going to the USDA and doing both loans at the same time, and we were moving that way, and the USDA come back with a interest rate that made it to where the project was undoable.
What was that interest rate?
It was a little over 3%. And it took the project completely out. I believe it was 3 3/8%. And the payment it becomes a real hardship or a real burden to try to operate the city and be able to do what we need to do to provide for the residents.
How many total connections, it's probably in the report, but how many total connections do you have on the water system?
A little over 2,800.
And 90 of them are in...
Well, I had 90 people at the last month's bill.
Okay, so that's not an indication of...
Well, but the monthly turn-off list or shut-off list, it averages right through there. We have some people that they receive some other funding, and so we were able to get them through. We have a work program for some people that can't pay their utility bills, but it's mainly for some of the younger people. And during the downturn of the economy, we had lots of them that were coming in and they were cutting weeds, trimming headstones or the grass around the headstones, just trying to do something to ease that burden. We have had many months where there has been over 120 people that are on the shut-off list. So it's not
The burden.
Yeah, it will become a tremendous burden, and the only thing I can see, if this is what we end up with, is a 3% loan in 10 years, because the payback would be at a much higher rate, that the only thing I'm going to do is increase this shut-off list and create more of a hardship on some of those people. And I hate to say that the majority of it is on old money, but it isn't. It's, as you watch this, it's changing demographically from, and a lot depends on how the economy is doing, but some of the new money or the younger people that have moved into the community, some of them are struggling. As we know, most of the interest rates are a lot better for homes than they was 40 years ago, but they also have a much higher house payment, and most of them all have refrigerated air, where people like me, we still suffer with a swamp cooler, and
Some of us can't even afford that.
well, I don't run it an awful lot. I go in the basement.
On your application, it shows you're coming up with $1.5 million of your own money.
Yes.
Is that out of a capital improvement fund, or is that excess in your revenues?
It's
Combination. We also have some that's coming out of impact fees, which is another one of our concerns. We want to allow time for the impact fees to come in. For the Main Street project, 26.7% of the project is calculated to be paid with impact fees, and 62.15% of the North Well project are impact fee eligible. We feel that the new development should help pay for these costs, and that's also why we would like that 10 years to be moved to 20, so we can allow for some of these impact fees to come in, so that it doesn't just affect the current residents, that the new development will pay their share.
Thank you. Board, any questions?
Mr. Chair, could we have staff, either Jacqueline or Eric, explain to us how the affordability criteria that we have adopted works? And then also, I know that there was some discussion about a scenario where there was a 5-year repayment that did qualify under that, and so there wasn't, you also ran the 10-year and landed there.
Yeah, I'd be happy to. So for years and years and years is the way we've operated, where we have had an affordability amount set. So the amount that that the board felt was affordable for water, and that was based on the Magi. And as the staff gets in and looks at the project, comes up, figures out how much it's costing for water service within the community, and compare it against the affordability amount that we came up with, if the cost of water within the community is above that affordability guideline, then we can start looking at reducing the interest rate or lengthening the terms, or both, whatever works best for us and for you, as long as that water service cost is below the affordability guideline. Then we need to stick with and recommend the maximum interest rate, which at this point is 3%. I think as Jacqueline calculated things out, it looked like even running the loan term down to 5 years would have stayed within that affordability number. Yet she's extended that out to 10 years already, and that's the basis for the recommendation that staff made.
And as I looked through those numbers and did those calculations, in essence, all we had done was raise the water rate sufficiently enough to make the payback to come back to pay the loan, and that's basically what we've done. Is we've raised the water rate so that All we do is for the next 5 or the next 10 years, that rate increase is strictly to pay back the loan. And I guess is what we're asking for is we're making it so that it's those current residents that are the ones that are going to have to pay this without ever being allowed to calculate in some impact fees that would allow for growth and growth to help pay for some of these improvements. It would be like us moving to your community and not having to pay an impact fee for all of the improvements that have been done in your community. All we'd have to do is pay the monthly service fee that we receive for water, sewer, garbage on your enterprise fund. And what I guess we're asking for is maybe a little out of the scope of what you guys do. I guess we're asking for some leniency. 'Tis the season. I had to throw that one in. Glad you got a chuckle out of that.
Seasons change quickly.
Well, the one thing I did notice is that apparently we live in the wrong part of this state because the report for water didn't even show us. So now you understand how valuable this is to us. We got 20 drops an acre coming, and we want to be able to collect all 20 and be able to drink 19 of them. So I guess that's our plea.
Mayor, what type of growth do you have or anticipate over the next 10 years? Is it 2%, 3%?
Well, 3, but that's a calculation, and I think it's a skewed calculation. There is some major development things in the issue and on the horizon for our valley, and I, because of confidentiality, I can't elaborate on some of this, but in the next few years, there is tremendous growth that is going to be expected there if a couple of these economic development projects come into play. Again, we move into somebody else's city and we get the benefit of what the past residents have had to suffer to pay without having to pay our fair share.
What bond rating does the city carry?
I believe we're an A or an A+. We've never faulted on any loans.
He always has us pay them off early.
We have always paid our loans off early. She calls me Taffy Pockets for a reason. I make her go Dutch. How's that? No, I don't, honest. Have her picking up beer cans on the side of the road before we get there, so.
Okay.
Mr. Chair, perhaps we could have your financial advisor just speak to what type of rate you could get in the market at that rating.
Okay.
Is it above or below that 3%? And then, of course, there's like issuance costs and everything else wrapped in. But
Alex?
Hi there, Alex Buxton, Zions Bank Public Finance. Currently, the city doesn't have an actual bond rating because they don't have a loan that's out in the municipal market that would require a bond rating. I would concur with what the mayor talked about with respect to an A or A plus rating, in that if they were to go out for a rating, I think that's where they would fall in line. Certainly, they've never defaulted or had a problem with paying back their loans. With respect to your question about where the market would be, I would say, given that general assumption of their credit, a 10 to 15 year loan, they would probably be in the 3 to 3.25% interest rate environment. Going out, one of the benefits I think in getting this done through a state entity like yourself is the ability to go out further, 15 or a 20-year term, whereas with a market loan, it would be much more difficult for them to fix an interest rate longer than about 12 to 15 years. There aren't too many banks out there that will fix longer than that period of time, and so I believe that's why they were hoping to get something a little bit longer in the 15 to 20 year range with a fixed interest rate. I think that would really be beneficial to them.
that's helpful. Thank you.
Thank you.
If I may, The reason that we're kind of in this dilemma is UDOT is going to rebuild the Main Street. If Main Street wasn't going to be rebuilt and you would have the moratorium of being able to dig into the Main Street for 3 years, we could probably put one of these projects off. But because of what is going to happen in our community, that's what creates some of this hardship, if you will, is being with both systems happening to be addressed. If we weren't in this predicament with having our Main Street replaced, we could certainly do one project and get a few years and then be able to do the other project. But this is where we're at. This is the cards that are on the table for us. And both projects are $5 million plus projects. So that's why we're, I guess, begging for a little more in terms of repayment.
I think that we appreciate the fact that you're trying to do all of this in the most efficient manner possible, really leveraging those tax dollars as much as you can. So we appreciate that you're thinking about the timing.
Jim, do you have a question?
I did. Mayor, I guess I'm a little slow. I'm confused on one issue. What has raising your impact fees got to do with the loan? Can't you change those whether you get the loan or not, so that the ones coming in are paying their fair share?
Just want time for those to come in to pay for the loan.
Yes. It's
Don't get them all at once.
impact fees only come into play as people move into the community. So when we did the calculations for this, we calculated in impact fees to help pay for this system. And we believe that we've calculated reasonable numbers, not exaggerating them and not being on the conservative side. We're trying to be realistic with the growth numbers that are there, but with the term of the loan being only 5 to 10 years, you don't allow the time for those impact fees to be able to come in and help fund this project.
I can probably add to that a little bit. When you look at impact fees, you can't use impact fees to correct existing deficiencies. The Main Street water main, the menagerie that it is an existing deficiency, so that's not impact fee eligible. So you also have a growth component in this project, but there's also the fact that pipeline infrastructure generally has a design life of generally 65 years, at least 50, and sometimes even up to 100. So we're actually trying to capture capacity that's beyond the planning window and beyond the window that we can reasonably project impact fees. So we have a growth component in the middle, say, just for illustration, upgrade from an 8 to a 10-inch pipe would be growth related, but the upgrade from the 10 to the 12 would not be. Yet we don't want to do this more than once through the life of the material or the design life of the pipeline. So that's where we are. That's why this project is, 26, 27% growth related, and the rest of it is correcting existing deficiencies and revenue that we'll capture outside of the planning window eventually, but it won't help us repay this loan. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I guess I was misunderstanding. I thought you were saying we really need to raise it on the new ones, but we're not going to do it. We're going to, the others are paying it, so.
Yeah, I think, it's equitable across the board between the two. It's just that the timing is, we only have one shot at this. We want to make sure that pipeline will be adequate for 65 years, and that's why a lot of this isn't impact fee eligible and has to be paid by the user rates.
And we did update our capital facilities plan for this project, and we did increase the impact fees. Been trying to plan ahead, been trying to get everything coordinated together. It's been a big project.
It isn't just the one project, it's 2 projects, so.
Just for the board, we've in the past, in some cases, deferred the payment for 2 years with an interest-only payment. If that would help anything. That would add, what, 215,000 to the entire loan?
Really wouldn't do much for us, I don't.
No, but that's,
not pretty
and staying with
sure
the policy of the board, that's about where we're at.
Would that give them 12 years? Are you saying 2 and then the 10?
Yeah, they just,
So it
2 years,
extends
they
it
just
out a
pay
couple more
interest
years?
only and not pay any of the principal back. And the interest only would be about 107,000 a year. Up to your fund, but
It'd still pay back in the 10 years.
no, it'd be 12 years.
It'd extend it to 12 years and require just an interest only.
It seems like going from 5 to 10 and then moving almost to 12, that almost seems kind of bumping up against what I'm sensing the board would feel comfortable with, what I'm feeling comfortable with.
Any other comments? We'll entertain a motion.
Mayor, I'm going to make a motion to fund it as staff has recommended at the 10 years, but does it help at all if we add that 2 years? Okay.
I don't see as to what the 2 years is gonna do other than you have me pay you more money.
Sure.
Because all I'm paying for is interest, and so I pay 2 years of the loan just interest, which would be a little over $100,000, and then I extend it for 2 more years, or extend it 2 years and get to pay the additional $100,000. So I really don't see as to where that's a benefit to the community.
It lowers does it lower the
It lowers the annual payment.
the payment?
For 2 years.
But over the course of 12 years, right? Wouldn't it, you're basically spreading it out over 12 years so that what your fee, like what you'd pass through to your customers would be lower? Or
I think it would actually raise it just a little
on
bit.
the
You would
back end.
defer the principal payments for
Gotcha.
2 years,
I
and so
gotcha.
that would add to the interest.
Yeah, gotcha.
And,
Okay. No, that's helpful.
The
But
only,
it would just allow them a couple more years. Was
to
the,
get some growth from additional impact fees.
Okay.
That may not be a benefit.
Yeah. It actually is maybe the negative. Okay.
I guess I just am somewhat concerned as to why your terms of your loan are such a short window on the repayment side of things.
Mayor, that it's back to the affordability guideline that the board has operated under for many, many years.
Okay, yeah, I understand that, and I don't know whether I explained our predicament with those that have moved in. They live in larger homes that cost $300,000 to $500,000. The original residents of the community live in 1,000 square foot homes. Trailers. I was just hoping that I could go for the 3% loan if I could get 20 years. I would even be willing to negotiate to 15 years.
Sounded like Zion's had that for you.
Yeah.
Well, and I didn't have to go through half of this. I think that was the reason for coming to a government agency, was to hopefully be able to get a lower interest rate with some longer terms for payment.
We got a number of options. We can go with the motion as been presented, or we can authorize it. Then between the authorization and the final middle of funds, work with them, or we could table it and have them come back in February and see, let the staff work with them and see what we can come up with.
I would be interested in just better understanding the true distribution of income. So, we know what that median income is, and we know that, given the growth, kind of the pattern of growth in the area, that we have this high income, and then we have what we're calling the old money, but truly understanding what people on the other side of the distribution are would be helpful. So I would be open to either authorizing and then coming back, or tabling. How do you feel about that, Mayor?
I would just as soon you give me a direction one way or another.
Yeah.
We're kind of on a timeline where
Yeah.
we have UDOT that we have to work with.
Whatever you decide, we're going to have to discuss, and we'll make a determination as to whether those terms can work for us or we need to look someplace else.
And I think that's your answer.
Yeah, okay, so the option with most certainty. May I make a motion then? All right, so I would move that our board authorize 70% of this project cost up to $3.57 million, and that the bonded indebtedness be returned at 3% interest over 10 years, with annual payments of approximately $469,000, including reserves.
Second.
Second, thank you. We have a second by Randy. Any questions on the motion? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you.
Thanks, Julia.
Our next item is Uintah Basin Irrigation Company. We'd like to welcome Brian Harvey, Vice President of the Uintah Basin Irrigation Company, Tom Henderson, Board Member, Maureen Henderson, Secretary, and Lane Pierce, Engineer with Franson Engineering. Tom?
Hey, Mr. Chairman, members of the board, the Uintah Basin Irrigation Company provides irrigation water to approximately 10,400 acres in the Mighton area in Duchesne County. Most of their area is under sprinkled pressurized irrigation, so they're doing well in that area. However, they receive their water through the 8-mile-long Gray Mountain Canal. If you look at the map, it's in the very lower left corner, one of the dashed lines there. The Gray Mountain Canal provides water to the applicant's service area, as well as about 3,500 acres of the Uintah Irrigation, or Ute Indian Irrigation Project, for a total of about 14,000 acres that receives water from that canal. About 5 miles downstream of the diversion is a piped, I just forgot the word.
Flume.
Flume, there we go, thank you. Over Antelope Creek, and if you look in the upper left of the map, you can see an inset of that. That flume was constructed originally in 1953 and has had repairs. Actually, after a number of years, then the pipe was wearing out. They rolled the pipe over so all the leaks were on the top instead of on the bottom, but the structure is deteriorating and leaking and is in need of replacement. So the applicant is before the board today to request funding for the project to replace the flume. Here's just another shot of the flume. You can see the deteriorating concrete in places where the water is leaking. So the project benefits would basically be to replace the flume on the Gray Mountain Canal, and that will ensure the continued delivery of irrigation water to approximately the 14,000 acres of farm ground. If that canal were to fail, the water supply to those acres would be stopped, and the crop yield would be decreased or eliminated possibly for that season. There's also a possibility of that water in the canal, if the flume failed, to go down Antelope Creek, and it may damage Highway 40, which is a main artery into the Uintah Basin. So the project cost is $475,000, and staff recommends the board authorize 57% of the project cost up to $271,000, and the project be purchased at 0% interest over 20 years with annual payments of approximately $13,600. Just a reminder, the 0% interest comes from because the project will be coming out of the revolving construction fund for smaller projects, and since the applicant will basically be getting no monetary benefit from the project other than continued use of their system, we've extended the repayment period out to 20 years. That's staff's report.
Board has any question for the staff?
I have a question. What kind of flows do you get through those flumes? I mean, we're talking, we got 10,000 acres, which I assume 40,000 acre feet. The water rights that are there's roughly 160 CFS, but there's also tribe water in there. What's the total flow that goes through there, just roughly?
At times 250 and up.
Anything from the applicant?
Oh, I want to say that this feasibility report should answer most of your questions. It was very well written. I would also like to thank Randy Crozier for his time that he's put in on this project with us. So.
Okay, thank you.
You couldn't convince Wayne to come today, though, could you?
No.
I was curious to see if you'd actually get him on this side of the hill, and I figured that you wouldn't. And so you did hold true to pattern. So anyway, Ryan, and it's good to have you guys with us today, and appreciate your coming. And we realize that, you know, where you do run in conjunction with the Indian Department or with the irrigation company, it does present some challenges. And are you getting close to a final commitment with that other portion from them, or have you got to that point
yes.
yet? Good. I'm glad to hear that.
Question I had also along those veins that Randy was just mentioning was, what's your plan B if the funding you're planning on from the other does not come through?
We will have to go back to BIA and the Ute Indian Irrigation Project and discuss it. We really don't have a plan B right this minute.
Will you have a commitment from them prior to construction?
I think so. They will pay 33% for sure, but they may contribute more than that.
Oh, good.
Questions? If there isn't any other questions, then I would make the motion. I move the board authorize 57% of the project cost up to $271,000, and that the project be purchased at 0% interest over 20 years with annual payments of approximately $13,600.
We have a motion. Do we have a second?
I'll second it.
We have a second by Kyle. No other questions. We'll entertain a vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you and good luck.
Thank you. We appreciate it.
Tell your dad hello. Harass him just a little bit for me.
Okay, I will.
He won't pay any attention anyway, right?
No, he never has he, Randy?
No, he hasn't. Anyway.
We have Blanding Irrigation Company with us. We have Phil Rowley, President, and Todd Rowley, Secretary.
Oh, I'm sorry, that's Shane Shumway.
Yeah.
We're here representing Summit Creek.
Not the wrong business.
We're on the wrong team. No Blanding. Being too efficient.
I'm being too efficient.
Shane.
Yes.
Welcome, Shane.
Thank you.
I thought I knew the Rowleys.
Mr. Chairman and members of the board, good morning. In August 16, the Blanding Irrigation Company appeared before the board and received authorization for their proposed project. At that time, the project consisted of piping 2 sections of open canal. The proposed project has since been revised to focus solely on piping the extent of dry wash canal, which is shown here in red on the map. This section of pipeline is located north of Blanding in the Abajo mountain range. Since authorization by the board, the applicant has been awarded a $300,000 Water Smart grant for the project. As you can see from the aerial view that I took from Google Earth, Dry Wash Canal passes through an extended area of steep terrain. Multiple seeps are visible on the downhill slope from the canal when there is water in the canal. Piping the canal will significantly increase the efficiency and decrease the risk of slope failure. And this photo here just shows, well, this photo was taken from the canal. You can see how narrow it is and how steep the gradient is both above and below the canal. The project was authorized at $440,000 from the board, but with the Water Smart grant we revised things. Staff recommends that the board commit 43% of the project cost, up to $264,000, and that would be purchased at 0% interest over 20 years, with annual payments of approximately $13,200. And this is staff's report.
Thank you. President Shumway, do you have anything you'd like to add?
No, I just appreciate you working with us in the past and now in the future, and thank Ben. Ben's been great to work with. I'm the president by default, nobody else to do it, so we're trying to place it's the worst farming country in the world, but we keep trying. So we're pretty brave coming for money for a project called Dry Wash too. So,
So you're saying the railroad works in your area as well? You just get railroaded into being the president?
That's exactly what's happened.
That's kind of how it works in most areas.
Any questions from the board?
Mr. Chairman, I need to recuse myself from this discussion or vote, as I am a shareholder in the Blanding Irrigation Company.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, I have a question for President Shumway. This says that you just basically eliminated the plans to pipe Johnson Creek. So Johnson Creek is no longer any way, shape, or form part of this then?
Not part of this time, no. Okay. Just too big of a project for us. So.
Hey.
Right now it's time. Can I make a request? Sorry.
Yes.
We have one loan with you that comes due. We're finished paying it off in 2024. We were wondering if we could dovetail this on, attack the payments starting at the end of those payments, end of that loan, if that was a possibility.
That would be another
7 more years.
7 more years.
Starters, yeah.
Afraid that might be too long to tie that money up.
Okay.
Add the current payments to the end. Why don't you go ahead?
Okay. Thinking that if you wanted to add the payments that you're currently making to this proposed repayment stream, when you're done, you could consolidate things that way. I don't see any way, based on history, that we could allow you to defer the payments on this new loan until the old one's paid off, but
okay.
Continue making that dual stream until it's done. Okay. Sure.
Okay, thank you.
Sure.
Thank you.
It's a spirit of giving, or time of year, a season of giving, we heard.
Yeah, but seasons are changing quickly.
Sounds like bah humbug here today.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to make a vote. I'd like to make a motion that we commit 43% of the project costs up to $264,000, and the project be purchased at 0% interest over 20 years with annual payments of approximately $13,200.
We have a motion. Any questions on the motion?
I'll second it.
We have a second by Jim. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you.
Okay,
Good luck.
thank you.
One abstention.
And one abstention we have. Now, Mr. Rowley, we have Summit Creek Irrigation and Canal Company. We have Phil Rowley as president and Todd Rowley as secretary. Ben?
Mr. Chairman and members of the board. In March 2016, $502,000 were committed to the third phase of the proposed project, which consisted of drilling a well and building a well house. The project has experienced a number of delays in well drilling and in getting power extended to the well site by Rocky Mountain Power. And because of these delays, and since the project is still not complete, payments were originally due this month, but because the project isn't quite finished, staff recommends that the increase in payments to $95,000 be deferred 1 year to begin in December 2018, and a regular payment of $65,000 be due in December 2017. And this is staff's report.
Now, we're talking Summit Creek Irrigation. We got Ephraim on the...
Oh, yes, this is Summit Creek. My apologies.
Mr. Rowley, you have anything you want to add?
I think he said it well.
Unless you want to transfer this to Ephraim Irrigation Company.
Good idea. On your suggestion, we'll do that.
They'd be happy to accept, right?
Yeah.
Since they're not here to speak for themselves today.
Questions from the board? This is a good project. They've been working on it for a number of years. And it is a good project.
I would make a motion that the increase of payments to $95,000 be deferred for 1 year to begin December 2018, and a regular payment of $65,000 be due this month in December of 2017.
Any questions on the motion? Blaine seconds it. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you. Good luck.
Thank you very much.
Next item on the agenda is Duchesne County Water Conservancy District. And they're withdrawing their application. We need a motion to withdraw this application.
So you do need a motion to withdraw it then? I would move that the project be withdrawn from further consideration by the board.
I'll second that.
We have a motion and a second by Norm. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Okay, the next item on the agenda is the water use and conservation report. Todd.
Chairman and members of the board, I'm excited to come talk to you today about our water use and conservation component. I think it was just last week, we went up to Weber State University and awarded them with the H2O water war competition between the universities. We had just under 1,200 pledges that were taken by the different universities. And this year, Weber State won. They beat USU out by 32 votes. I demanded a recount, but it didn't happen. We awarded Weber State University $5,000 to be used for their water conservation scholarship. So it was a pretty great time. The president was there. Eric and the president gave some great speeches, and they're excited to move forward. So we thought we'd talk to you about that. Just this last couple of weeks, the legislative auditors came back and visited with us on the audit follow-up from 2015. We've gone through two different rounds of edits to the audit. The audit looks really good. It will be released publicly next week, but they like the things that the division has been working on and in conjunction with drinking water as well as water rights. The forms and the data that have come in 2016 versus the prior years, showing some marked improvement in the water and the water use, as well as what's been recorded. Does that say it's perfect? No, but we're working towards that. They like the changes that we've done in our modeling, those sort of things. They still have a few recommendations for the legislature to look at on tiered pricing. What was another one? On secondary water metering, and so we're working towards that. Myself and Weber Basin gave testimony at the Water Development Commission last month on potentially putting in a goal for secondary water systems to become metered. Nobody jumped right up and said we want to run that legislation, so I'm sure we'll study that for a little bit and see where that goes. Maybe things will change between now and the session, but that's where we stand. So that's a quick update report. Are there any questions?
Thank you, Todd.
Thank you.
We have the board schedule for 2018. Motion to approve that schedule.
I'd move that we approve the calendar for 2018 schedule.
Motion by Randy. Do we have a second?
I'll second that.
I'll second that. All in favor?
Aye.
Director's report.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just want to follow up just a little bit with what Todd said and say thanks to Todd and his staff, as well as the Division of Water Rights and the Division of Drinking Water for the excellent work that they've done to meet the audit recommendations that were made in 2015. And it's good to see a good report come out of that. We and those other agencies have been very responsive. Things have happened in the legislature to address some of those recommendations also, and so we're happy with the progress that's been made, and we'll continue to make progress on that. Wanted to just visit with you briefly about the Flaming Gorge water right negotiations that are ongoing with the Bureau of Reclamation. We've had 2 meetings with the Bureau thus far to negotiate 2 contracts. If we took that whole 158,890 acre feet that was transferred from the Bureau to the board, and look at the board's actions on that somewhere around the year 2000, that right was divided into 2 major blocks, one for tributaries to the Green River as well as the Green River itself, and the other for the Lake Powell pipeline. And so the 2 contracts will cover those 2 principal blocks. We've come to agreement pretty much on the language that would be in those contracts, still working through some of the details of the numbers on costs and the terms of the agreement that way. So we have gone through 2 negotiation sessions, one in Vernal for the Green River block, one in St. George for the Lake Powell pipeline block. We will have one more session in January is what we're expecting. We could do more if we need, but we're hoping to have things wrapped up on January 18th, and we would meet in 2 separate meetings actually to go through the final details on those two contracts. Things are still plugging away with drought contingency planning on the Colorado River. The Colorado River Water Users Association conference is next week. I will be down there along with some of our staff, and we will be talking through a lot of those things in further detail. And then I just, in closing and finally, want to just say, here we are close to the end of a year, and say thanks again to the board for your contributions to the state of Utah and to helping assure that water that needs to be developed can be developed, that water conservation occurs, that the planning that is needed occurs, and you are so important in making sure that happens, and we appreciate that. And you're all such nice people to work with. So with that, Mr. Chairman, that's my report.
Thank you. Any questions for the director? Is there any other business we need to address today from the board?
I'd make a motion we adjourn then.
We have a motion to adjourn. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
We have a second. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Meeting's adjourned.